On the 17th of April 2026, the Five for Palestine campaign organised a tour of the Crumlin Road jail in Belfast to mark a global day for Palestinian prisoners. 3 former Republican prisoners, Tommy McKerney, Joe McNulty and Barry Murray, outlined their experience of being brought through a tunnel that connected the prison to the courthouse.
This is the tunnel that we were brought across from the jail to the courthouse on the other side. You were brought across every month for what was known as remand. That meant that you were just remanded to the next remand sort of thing. It went on for about a year. We were 12 months here. And were handcuffed and brought down from the wings and brought across here handcuffed. There could have been maybe 20 of us or 30 of us, maybe even depends.
It would have been, yes. Brought across here and taken in to be returned again every month. As Barry said, it was
just a legal nicety.
Exactly, yeah. Legal nicety. And it's from this tunnel now that Jim Bryson made his escape. Before my time, actually, but Jim was being escorted. He grabbed a pistol from one of the RUC men that was escorting him and shot his way out. So after that then we took the police unarmed across with us, each of us handcuffed to either a cop or a prison officer, a screw, which was a usual gruesome trip.
And that would have went on for maybe 12 months, back and forth. Some people were longer, maybe 18 months, depending on what way the case was going. And then you were brought down to the H blocks after that.
I have a memory of Joe McNulty appearing in the dock. I remember Joe saying, putting his fist up and saying, political prisoner. And that was in 1977.
When you went across the tunnel and you knew you were going up in front of the wig, the judge, we didn't recognise the court and said we're political prisoners and that was it. You'd think you'd be glad to get out of the cell for a while, but this tunnel was that gloomy that, it was nearly the same as a cell, only you're moving a bit more.
Claustrophobic.
So really and truly, the tunnel escapades over to the court, you really didn't look forward to them because it really just was an extension of the cell, and that was it.
I think the important thing to remember is too that, the Palestinian prisoners that are all 10,000 of them or more that are in jails in Palestine are suffering an awful lot more than ever we suffered. Like, we didn't suffer rape. We would have been beaten from time to time. But we certainly didn't suffer anything like what the Palestinian prisoners are suffering at the present time. And that's why we're here today, to support the Palestinian and solidarity of the Palestinian prisoners, and in particular Marwan Barghouti.
The Victorian-era prison opened in 1846 and closed in 1996. Its disturbing history still echoes through its landings, where executions by hanging took place, where suffragettes were held in the 1800s, and where hundreds of young Irish men, including Bobby Sands and his comrades, were held. Albert Pierpoint, Britain's most prolific executioner of the 20th century, has his place on the wall. Tommy McKerney, no stranger to these walls, and 1980 hunger striker, reminded us Eamon de Valera, former Taoiseach and president of the partitioned Irish state, availed of Pierpoint's services when he ordered the hanging of Republican prisoners in the 1940s. The irony, De Valera himself was sentenced to be executed by the British for his part in the 1916 Rising, and also a former Republican prisoner in the Crumlin Road jail in 1924. The execution chamber where Tom Williams, a Republican prisoner, was hung in 1942, a bookcase from a prison cell was visible. Tommy McKerney explained.
This bookcase would have been slid across over here. So when the condemned gone within the condemned cell, he would have thought there was just a bookshelf here. He didn't realise that behind the bookshelf was the gallows. So there used to be 3 clear Sundays between passing of sentence and execution. So that's why executions happened there. 8 o'clock on Monday morning, 7 o'clock on Monday morning, you'd be taken up, offered a last plate to eat, and it's the hands tied behind his back. And at the tail end, all of a sudden, instead of he never walked to his death down the landing, his hair would be pulled back to relieve the gallows, and then here's the gallows. It's a gruesome way to execute anybody. It's actually no longer seen as even a humane way of execution, but it's deliberately done in Palestine mode for day one, to reverse exhibitionist way of executing people. For example, Kevin Barry's song, "Shoot me like an Irish soldier, hang me like a dog." Yeah. So that's exactly what the Israeli Zionists are doing at the moment. They're trying to convey the impression that Palestinians are criminals. And the thing about it is that's part of what they're doing. It's gruesome, deem them criminals. Now they're not criminals, obviously, to deem Palestinian resistance as criminal, which is typically part of the British.
It's the British started the hanging process in Palestine when they brought their own black and tans from Ireland as well. They started, especially the famous one in 1929. We call it the Borat Revolt, which is and here they call it the Welling War Revolt. The Palestinian protested against bringing Jewish immigrations from all over Europe to Palestine. That's 1929. And they got the leaders of the Palestinian revolt and they hanged them in Acre in Palestine. Publicly, they hanged them, and they hanged others in India in cells. But the leaders were portrayed to everyone to see. They kept them even for days hanging in the streets. As Tommy said, this is a way to show they are criminalizing the resistance and to punishing the resistance. The Zionist entity kept that British rule after the establishment of the Zionist entity in Palestine effectively. They were killing without hanging during all of these years. Like the last 2 years, over 100 Palestinians being killed in their own jails, executed, but thousands being killed on a daily basis as well. But they brought this new law to hang the Palestinian resistance, as Tommy as well said, to criminalize it and to make sure within that law they said anyone who resists the existence of Israel, the Zionist entity, will be subject to that law. To deter the Palestinian resistance, to tell any Palestinians who are going to join and refuse the occupation, this is your fate, you're going to be hanged or you're going to be killed. It's part of the criminality was initiated by the British and continued by the Zionists.
Tommy described how the condemned man was made to stand on the platform.
The condemned man would be forced to stand on that platform there, hands behind his back, noose would put around his neck, and then the handle over there would be pulled and the top door would open and he would fall down. See, that is a hanging noose. It's unlike the hanging noose that you see on television. And it would be put on sideways, the side of the neck, rather than front of the neck, so as he fell, he would break his neck and be killed by breaking his neck. Hangman had a condemned man weighed so that he knew exactly where he would fall to break his neck and then pulling his head off.
So the prisoners wouldn't die from hanging, or they would die by the broken neck?
Yes, he was weighed to make sure, and the scientific measurement wanted to break his neck to kill him, but also not to have him decapitated. Prior to that, execution was strangulation. The British, of course, towards the end of the 19th century became more humane. So instead of strangulation or breaking necks, it was instantaneous. So that was the theory anyway, it was supposed to happen. It's not like the thing you see in cowboy films. That is typical noose. You slide down and put on to break the neck.
The typical cell had a chamber pot in the corner, Tommy explained that in his time they spent 24 hours in the cell.
There was a chamber pot in the corner and a gallon of water. That was what you had. And you spent, in my time here, we were, every other day we had to spend 24 hours a day in the cell. And the days you got out for 2 hours a day. A double bunk and a single bed here, 3 in the cell. Well, you could imagine.
Was there toilets, sink?
No, there wasn't yet a chamber pot. The other thing was that you used to hear about, at night some men had to defecate, so they'd wrap it in plastic and throw it out the window. Known as mystery parcels. It used to be for to pull them down. Sometimes the piece of glass broken out and fling it out.
Is that because people didn't want that in the cell for the smell?
Exactly.
Parcels.
Mystery parcel. And the next morning, you see, before they go out to exercise yard, they had to send out the trustees would go out. These were guys, usually convicted criminals, who were getting extra privileges for cleaning the place up.
So all these windows go out, is that through the outside yard you were allowed out and just straight out there?
Yeah.
And the prisons around that yard, does it go right around it?
No. Every wing had its own yard.
As own yard, all separately, okay, right.
What happened at my time, because they were trying to integrate us, Republicans would stay in one day and the lawyers would go out, and then the next day around we'd go out and they would stay in. There's always there's an agreement between ourselves and the loyalists to save punch-ups, really. But what it meant was that instead of getting out for exercise every day, you got out every second day for exercise.
So you got to know some of the pilots.
Next, Tommy showed some of the offices of the prison staff and censors.
This officer, he was the screw in charge of the prisoners on this side, his office there. Usually there were male nurses who joined the prison service. So if you needed any help, you had to get medicine there. On remand, you're entitled to so many parcels a week. Parcels were left in there and you had to come down to collect your parcel.
The people outside queued outside leaving the parcels.
Yes.
And you were allowed fruit, oranges, pears and apples.
That's right.
And you could smell the fruit outside, as we queued up to put the parcels in. So this is where they ended up.
Yeah, and you had to come down here to collect your parcel and newspapers as well. That was the censor office. Anything you sent out had to be read by the censor, and he decided whether it could be read out or not, or what these had to be scrubbed out. Plus letters coming in, he had to read the letters coming in before you got your letter.
Yes.
So that was censored.
So this is where all the censoring.
Yes, in there, yes.
Going out and coming in.
Yes,
The red,
every
everything.
word.
Yes.
No doubt copied as well.
Yeah.
Punishment cell was what we called the boards. Your bed was taken out, you were given a mattress at night time. Bread and water.
And this was a punishment cell.
Yes, it would have been one of them now. It's an example of a punishment cell.
Would you have been in here on your own?
Yes, and you see your bedding and everything was removed through the day. At night, about 8 o'clock at night, you'd have got a mattress and it taken away again the next morning at 8 o'clock. Now, in my time, bread and water used to be the punishment, that's all they had. But then they changed it back to minimum.
Rations?
Yes. And again, that's the chamber pot there. In the morning, you'd call it slop out. There was a sort of a common urinal up at the receptacle up at the top of the wing. You had to carry it up to the top of the wing and empty the chamber pot out. But it's rather than keep the smell in the cell, some men would have parcelled them.
As described at the other cell.
Yeah. Gaza-born Dr. Saib Shaf, a tireless activist for his people and the Palestinian cause, outlined his perspective.
We are in here in it to remember our own Palestinian prisoners who are suffering today in the dungeons, some of the jails in which Israel invented even the ground to make the Palestinian feel suffocation while they are existing. The British who built these prisons in Palestine and the Israelis run them today In here we can reflect the old Republican prisoners who's been jailed in here. We have Tommy today and Barry who's been in here. At the same time, it's a kind of disturbing kind of place to be in, and to remember how many souls being tortured and being, some of them even being executed and buried in here. At the same time, the Palestinian prisoners today, you cannot explain even or tell how the stories of their torture and the way they exist under this fascist regime, which is started and built by the British themselves. And existing today, we're calling for the release of Marwan Barghouti and Ahmed Saadat and the rest of the Palestinian prisoners whose the Israelis issued laws to execute them, to execute any Palestinian who dare to resist. And in their new law for the execution of the Palestinian resistance, they framed anybody who resists the state of Israel is subject to be executed. That means they are planning to execute any Palestinian who dare to resist the Zionist entity. That's all what I want to say in here. It's a disturbing place to be in, and God one day will punish these people who cause all the suffering for the Irish or for the Palestinians or for any people who's been under their oppression regimes.
In the eerie prison landing, we concluded the tour with a rendition of brave Tom Williams in his memory and in his honour.
Those who plundered, brutal murder, we fought to make them all bread. So here's a word to our soldiers. If Tom's value turns to stray, just keep in memory of that war when Ireland's cross was proudly borne by a lad no longer in this prison play. Free, free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free all the Palestinian hostages!
On exiting the prison, a British armoured tank on display brought back childhood and teenage memories from the early 1970s. We spontaneously sang the song of that time, The Men Behind the Wire.
His name again is solid in the eyes of honest men. Armored cars and tanks and guns came to take away our sons. Every man will stand behind the men behind the wire.
In conclusion, the tour was only a snapshot of a part of our history. The preserved hanging noose and drop platform in the execution chamber served to remind us of a new law recently passed by the Israeli regime on the 30th of March 2026 to hang Palestinian prisoners. We stand with our Palestinian brothers, sisters and children held hostage in Israeli dungeons.